Hello and welcome to everybody. This morning it's really nice to see you all wherever you might be. Thank you for turning up on a Friday morning to listen to our info session on how to human. I've been working with Safe in Our World for a couple of years now doing this work, and we continue to evolve it and be able to offer these ideas, but also structures and tools to be able to reach out to those within the industry sectors, but also those at a sort of management and leadership level. And that's kind of what today's info session and the program that we're offering is all about. Now, we're going to have some time for questions at the end, but you please feel free to be able to put any thoughts or comments within the chat. And as you say, Sky and Em are going to be looking after that whilst I speak for the next 50 minutes. I'm going to be showing some slides and mainly presenting through that today. You will all have a copy of those slides in a PDF format at the end for your reference. And also we're going to be jumping in between Mentimeter to be able to do a tiny little bit of interactivity so that I'm not just speaking into the void, and that we do have a semblance of connection today. So the idea of a light-hearted but kind of interesting look at what you might want to say. You don't have to participate if it's not your thing. That's totally fine. We're just sort of using it to be able to get a gauge on your good selves. So I'm going to dive into sort of screen sharing. If there's anything super urgent, i.e. you can't hear me, please try and get in touch with Sky. Otherwise, hopefully we can connect in real life at the end if you've got questions. Okay, I'm going to share my screen. And hopefully you'll be able to see this, she says. Okay. If you can't see it, please do shout in chat. Otherwise, I'm going to continue with the presentation. So, how to human. My name is Lisa Marie Hall, so you can call me Lisa, and I work on behalf of Safe in Our World. And I developed this program because it feels like human connection is something that we could all do with some additional help, particularly in a world that is becoming increasingly disconnected in the world of work. Now, I'm going to use this thing called Mentimeter. You may be very familiar with it. If you're not, it's going to be really straightforward. So I'm going to jump between screens, bear with, and we are going to use this, if it will let me. Come on. Okay, so Menti. Menti is something very simple. If you've got a phone or an iPad, you can click and use the QR code. If you are on a web browser at the moment, you can open another window and go to menti.com. All you need to do is enter the code 811-7367. And this is also details will be put in the chat, so you can always refer to it. If you are opening another web browser or you're using your phone, please keep this window open throughout today's session because we will be returning to it. And all we're going to do is we're going to ask some interesting little questions for us today. If you've got any problems, again, please put it in chat and Sky will be able to assist you. So we're going to go and jump into a little check-in, okay? It's a Friday morning. This is going to be a deeply intellectual so we're going to start off with sheep today. How are you doing today in sheep scale? I love the person who's picked number 4 already. Thank you for doing that. Excellent. This talk is going to go well, I can tell. Okay, number 2. Okay, some tired people, perhaps because it is a Friday. No 9s. No 9s for the joy, but we do have 3 8s. Great. I didn't even look over here. I look forward to working with the people that selected 8. No 6s. Okay, and no 1s. This is good. This is good. Right. So it's just a playful way to kind of connect you to. But although there is a sort of a clue hidden in this slide today. So if you're good using Menti, we're going to come back to that shortly. So keep that window open. I'm going to continue with this. Okay, now it's the only bit of data I'm going to show. But when kind of putting together this talk, obviously I have a lot of conversations because that's a really good place to start. I know I am not actually from the gaming sector myself, come from the film and TV world. So it's always good to listen as to like getting a pulse of what's going on. And it's an industry event, Safe in Our World. We're chatting to some delegates, and they sort of did a small poll, and it's a small data set, admittedly, but it is quite indicative of what we perhaps will sense or have some experience, regardless of kind of perhaps where you've worked. And the question asked was, what kind of support would help you advocate for yourself more confidently? It's a complex question, and workplaces are complex, but it was quite interesting. The majority answer was not necessarily training or workshops. Mentorship and peer support is obviously important. So it's obviously showing that human interactions are quite key here, to sort of help build confidence, particularly when advocating for yourself. But at the top, at the lead, was more supportive leadership. And that's quite interesting, that it seems to, the onus seems to be on leaders and managers being the type of sort of being responsible in a way for creating this environment. And I kind of have a bit of a soft spot for managers and leaders being put in tough situations, and it's challenging. Work is challenging, and managing people is challenging, and this is really indicative of the pressure that this actually adds. Not to necessarily everybody, but those perhaps are new to management or leadership positions, restructuring within companies, people moving up too quickly because there has been a drop in the workforce. Lots and lots of factors come into play as to why this responsibility. And it felt like this was a really good way in to share with you kind of how we could offer a tool to be able to perhaps kind of answer this question a bit more fully. So I'm going to go back to Menti and just do like a check-in with you here. And we're going to go to the next question, which is, what does supportive leadership look like to you? Again, this is a word cloud. You can put in, I think, 3 answers if you wanted to. And it's kind of like, what does it look like to you? There, again, no right or wrong answers in this one. And if you could just sort of describe it, maybe there's like an action. Is there something that you've done that you think actually is a concrete way of describing supportive leadership? Yeah, for example, it's a great answer, creating a safe space for someone. Okay. Yes, building trust. Motivation, I really like that one. That's really interesting. Yeah, employing emotional intelligence, listening. See, transparency, I love that one. It's a big one for me. Yeah, giving space is great as well. So some fantastic words here. Psychological safety. Yeah. Love how compassion, support, and trust are obviously, trust is coming out, leading at the moment. Not that it's a race, but yes, kindness, taking accountability. These are all fantastic and actually really powerful words. And I really thank you for sharing that. But what I find interesting is that there's a huge range of words there. There is no one size fits all. And obviously it looks in different ways to different people. And that's kind of the point of doing the word cloud, is it's more the diversity of answers that we've just received. I'm going to go back. Supportive leadership. So what does it actually look like is the question we have. But the thing is, does everybody have the same definition? So when we come to a workforce, we perhaps assume the leader or manager working above us or a team above us also have exactly the same definition as yourself. And do we assume every leader and manager knows what supportive is and how their team would actually recognise and accept it? It works both ways. We might have an expectation of support, but that's not necessarily the same as what is being delivered. So having all these different words is helpful, but the problem is, are we all connecting around the same words? For me, this is where the sheep comes in. For me, the word supportive is actually quite woolly. I love sheep, it's nothing against sheep, but this idea of woolliness, And this is kind of important in communications, is like we latch onto words, but words are incredibly abstract. And what we're trying to find is something quite concrete that can essentially help us all be on the same page. And so we're trying to sort of take the woolliness out of this idea of supportive leadership. And this is kind of will help those who are managing people, managing teams, managing one other person, or managing an entire company. So our experience shows us that when we connect with people, we are better able to offer and receive support that makes a difference. So the connection is pretty key here. It kind of connects to the word trust as well. But connecting with people is hard. I don't deny that. I've been in many tricky work situations. I look back and I could have behaved so much differently and better in many ways when I've run big departments. But because everybody speaks and listens in a radically different way. We all have good intentions. I do believe that we come to work with great aspirations to look after the people and look after ourselves. But it's hard. It's hard to connect effectively and respectfully, particularly when there is great change and uncertainty, and also time pressures and complexity within, an industry sector. This is basically why we created the How to Human program, is not to find a one-size-fits-all script for everybody, but to actually offer a framework about connection itself as the way to perhaps overcome some of this woolliness. The way I like to describe it, so spoiler alert, I'm a designer and an artist, and I work a lot with geometry. Love a triangle. Okay, so you're going to see a lot of triangles today. Apologies if it's not your favorite shape, but it is mine. But I wanted to find a simple way to demonstrate the problem that we're doing in a visual way. And we have two mountains here. We have one called the Values and Intentions Mountain, and we have Actions Mountain in the green on the right-hand side. We're often standing and we build ourselves with great values and intentions. But the idea is that we kind of need to get to the action. So we all have great intentions to be able to connect with people, to do good things at work, to include everybody, to hit diversity standards, to run meetings really well, to be compassionate. But actually our actions don't just naturally happen and follow through. You'll notice this from everything from like, I definitely have an intention to do my tax return, but do I do it in April? No, I don't, because it's not fun. There's lots of reasons why I don't do it, but my actions don't necessarily follow through. So there is a disconnect here. We can't get our values and intentions necessarily to just seamlessly move over into actions. And what we do is we call this a gap. And it is known as the value action gap. And you may already be familiar with this, but if you're not, it is often referred to as other things and can be used in many different topics, such as climate and sustainability here. But the idea is that this gap exists, okay? It's like a valley between two mountains. And in this gap is life. Stuff happens that stops you really kind of getting from your mountain of values and intentions to the top of your mountain of actions. And this gap is quite pervasive, and it's part of our human sort of psyche, really. But the aim is how do we bridge that gap? Because it's so important that we do follow through on our actions, where trust is built, for example, as you all quite rightly pointed out in the word cloud. In order sort of to see that trust, we kind of need to bridge this gap. And a lot of people spend a lot of time thinking about how do we do this, myself included. And for me, finding connection is the key in order to be able to bridge that gap. Again, it's quite an abstract word. And we're gonna break this concept of finding connection down into something very practical. There's an actual tool that you are going to be given as part of this program. So we've tried to realize this into something substantial. So this is where How to Human was formed, and it is a language toolkit for finding connection. So the finding connection part is kind of like the overriding idea behind all of this. This is a 2-part online program. Today's info session is kind of giving you a little taster of some of the concepts, but it is a training program where you can be guided through how to use this toolkit, what it is, what it looks like, and how to apply it. And that's what we're offering today. The gap. The gap's pretty critical in understanding what the gap is. This is some of my research field as well, but other research has identified 2 big factors in shaping this gap. They found that there are 2 things. One is the subjective perception of time, busyness. Okay, when we feel too busy, the gap widens. Now, I know this, when communication fails most when we're too busy. Often it fails when we rely on shorthand, and in a workspace, in a very technical workspaces, we develop a shorthand that is incredibly useful and time-saving in one respect. But if you have people that's new to that space, or you have people that do not understand that shorthand, or you have deadlines that are pressuring those that work differently, maybe have a different neuro identity to yours. Whenever we kind of speed things up a little bit and try and be effective in that way, when we get too busy, often that's a reason why our intentions don't line up with our actions. And when we feel too busy, we do the things that we just really feel that we want to do. Doesn't necessarily mean there's the films that we need to do. And that perception of time is fascinating, I think, to all of us, and all of us have a different experience of it. But being too busy is fascinating, because time is quite literally the constant for all of us. It is the same amount of units we all get. So the idea of being too busy, or having less time than somebody else, or being time poor, is a way to skew perhaps how we also approach connection. The other factor on the right, the role of imitation. That means role modeling. So when there is a lack of role modeling, the gap persists. Often if we don't have someone demonstrating how to get from the top of the mountain of values and actions to the top of the mountain of actions, if we don't know how to get there, we tend to just go, well, I'll let someone else do it, or it's okay, no one else has gone there, so it's okay not to. So having a lack of role modeling is a huge factor in why the gap persists. It often takes somebody to go ahead to show the way in order for us to feel more comfortable and confident in being able to bridge that gap. So thinking of time, I spend a lot of my time working around neuroidentities, and I'm fascinated with the human brain. I think all brains are brilliant, especially yours. And we're going to look at the brilliant brain, and a lot of what I do kind of keep focuses on a little bit of science, rather than lots of abstract psychology. So I'm sort of just looking at how the brain works, because I think it's quite helpful sometimes to remember what's up here. And I'm going to ask a really simple question. This is not a trick question. What is 2 + 2? Okay. You don't have to put the answer in chat. You probably know the answer. And it's obviously 4. And it's a basic level of maths that we experienced as a child. This is an example of fast thinking. Fast thinking is fascinating. Fast thinking is a part of our brain, a mode that our brain, is a very crude definition here, but a mode of our brain, and it works through instinct. It works through judgment, assumption. It is incredibly reactive, and it evaluates very quickly. It's brilliant. It keeps us alive, this bit of our brain. It used to help us sort of dodge the predators, and also be able to just use all this memory that our brains store in order to be able to employ knowledge or actions again. So it's like we exist in this mode half of the time, and it's stops us being hit by a car if we cross the road without looking. It's all to do with protecting us in a way, and it's incredibly useful, particularly in high pressured emergency situations, for example. And the reason why the brain does that is because it's energy efficient. The brain and the body hates, it just will not expend energy it doesn't need to. It's an incredible system we have. It will never, ever give out more energy than it actually needs to. So what it does is it puts our brain into this mode that can rely on patterns that we've obviously learned in the past and things that we've remembered in order to just instinctively answer. So we're not actually sitting there using more energy than we have to. So it's brilliant in energy efficiency. And we need this to stay alive. But when I throw a maths question, and I'm not this good at maths, and some on this call may do this instantaneously, and full admiration to you, 317 times 928. Off the top of your head, know what the answer is? No, I don't either. And this is a kind of a question that makes you stop and go, oh, I'm not sure, I'll have to think about it. This is an example of slow thinking. This is the other mode that our brain is, slow thinking brain. Our slow thinking brain works in the other way. It essentially has to stop and think about stuff. It has to stop and consider, and it has to utilize other things in its arsenal. So it could try different methods. Okay, so you may have remembered other kind of like visual diagrams for learning complex multiplication. You use external aids. You could just reach for a calculator. If you can find your phone and remember where your phone is, you could ask someone for help. You can make that a sort of a joint problem to solve, or you could utilize other things around you to answer the question, all of which though are making you stop from your present situation, and now you're consumed with answering this particular maths problem. And that's quite fascinating, because it's kind of like it's cut everything else, and you're actually being very present in dealing with it. And this is obviously using up more energy, but obviously it's obviously an answer it needs to come up with. So it needs more energy in order to solve the equation. So the slow thinking brain is actually quite helpful, particularly when we are given new tasks, we're in new environments, and we're dealing with new people. But when we use our fast thinking brain, we do speak words that use evaluation and assumption. So that could everything from shorthand, but also to ideas of how we comment on people. You're not being good enough, for example. They might be good and evaluatory in your head, but obviously we're just throwing these words out there in a very instinctive way. And when we do that, the other person listening, who also likes to use a fast thinking brain, immediately will start hearing judgment and criticism and negativity. And this is what builds often when we have challenging conversations, or we have team people. We work with teams, and there are challenging dynamics within a team. So everybody normally, and often in pressured situations or in uncertain workplaces, we employ our fast thinking brain. We're probably using energy in elsewhere, and actually the kind of the interactions with people, we just need to make it happen. Just need to get on and just like get stuff done. And so when we start using the fast thinking brain, we create an epic disconnect between people. So the words that we say and the way we hear it, if we use our fast thinking brains, means that we become very disconnected with people. That's essentially the opposite of supportive leadership, because it becomes really difficult to be supportive and receive the right kind of support if we are in that place of disconnect. And because we have used that evaluatory, assumption, instinctive driven way that we respond to people. Now, we all do this. This is very human, but actually it's something we have habitually learned through conditioning as adults. Actually, children are far easier at making connections than they are at the disconnect. And it is something that happens through schooling, through life experience, through our caregiving, and through literally being an adult in this rather challenging world that we live in. So it's something that we all share, but something that can be worked on to improve. So that kind of comes to me, if we're going to connect. The very accurate rendering drawing of me in the centre. I always wear green. I have a mohawk that isn't green, but I'd like it to be. And I have done many things, and I am many things. And I come from 25 years working as a designer in the film and TV industry. I designed a Marvel TV show, and it broke me, and I left the industry after 25 years. And I actually developed a care for creatives from that, and I worked in wellbeing, coordination, studied sleep neuroscience, became a sleep health advisor, and an ambassador for the sleep charity. I kind of really care about looking after how we advocate for ourselves, so that we can continue to do the creative things that we want to do, but also I think I've learned a lot about people, and the differences we have, how challenging the world is. And I've become a huge advocate for neuro-inclusion, understanding my own neuro-identity, those of others. And I've worked as a coach, mentor, and now sort of communications consultancy. I also lecture in sustainability, climate justice, social justice. So I kind of like mash the whole thing up as a career portfolio. And under the whole umbrella, I would say it's human sustainability. How do we care about ourselves before we care about others, before we care about the environment that we're in? So I'm very much an advocate for looking at myself, but also how to role model that. And I felt like I lacked role modeling, and this is kind of why I'm doing this work, and why I really believe in Safe in Our World's approach, who have a very similar approach in terms of role modeling excellent behaviours, and inspiring ways to be able to support people. So we have a wonderful alignment here today. But because I'm a designer first and foremost, I love driving change with practical tools. Can't stand loads of abstract chat. Where I'm like, well, yeah, but what does that look like, and what does that mean? So I kind of need practical things to help me, whether that's a visual, but I kind of feel that often people want something quite tangible, and that's what we're offering rather than just some concepts. We actually want to give you a tool. And so the last 2 years we've been working together, Safe in Our World, and we developed something firstly called Self-Advocacy Speaking, which was the first iteration. We worked with Google Play, and again, it was about the finding connection. And we offered a lot of programs to employees, particularly those that are from more underrepresented groups. And we've developed this work even further to high level sort of management and leadership. But underpinning all of that work together is this framework. Here it is again, it's another triangle, and the triangle is the framework for having a conversation, and that can be a challenging conversation often, or conversations where there potentially is a power dynamic, i.e. a person in position of power, i.e. team leader, team manager, and those that are working underneath them or in a line management hierarchy. And this idea of a framework that we want to give to you. We are going to give it to you today, but we are going to use the program to go into it in much more detail and create a practical tool. So it's an iceberg that I turned into a triangle. At the end of the day, that's all it is. The iceberg model is a well-known concept in many guises. It's very useful in this one. And this is the foundation to the framework. This is the framework. It's also, if you are familiar with non-violent communication, it's very similar to that, except we've slightly adapted it for perhaps a more neuro-inclusive world these days. But the idea is that you have a tiny little bit visible above the waterline, number one, which is known as observations. And you have 3 layers underneath the waterline, 2, 3, and 4, which are always hidden from view in a good old classic iceberg scenario. And these strata, as you go down, are listed as feelings, needs, and requests. And the idea of the framework is that you need to go through the steps 1, 2, 3, 4 in order sort of to give you the framework as to how to have a conversation. So it's a 4-step approach, and we learn about it in an order, and the order is also important. The idea is to get to the bottom of the iceberg, to truly understand everything that you need to tackle, really. If only the Titanic understood this. I'm going to, starting with this idea of observation, I'm going to ask a question. We're going to go back to Mentimeter, and I'm going to ask, what do you see in this image? Now, this image appears in your Menti, hopefully, your Menti slide. What do you see in the image? There is, again, no right or wrong answer in this at all. But we're thinking about, obviously, you know, looking after people here, and sort of safe working environments and being compassionate. So what do you see in this image? Okay, stress, hopelessness, giving up, paralysis, headache, panic. Yeah. Okay, we're seeing a lot of stress and frustration and despair. Okay. Tiredness. Yeah. Okay, so thank you for your responses. They're all potentially excellent, and probably based on something that you might have seen before. However, that's not the answer I was looking for. The answer is a person holding their head in their hands, looking down, sitting on a chair. That is all that you actually observe from that photo. And this is a perfect example of step one, the observation stage. Now, you all ultimately employed your fast thinking brain here. You had seen an image similar to this before. You had potentially experienced this posture yourself before. And you are all using recalling of memory and emotional memories that you may have had, witnessing or experiencing yourself, to go, oh, I've seen this, I know what this looks like. This looks like someone who's really stressed, tired. We've seen it perhaps in movies on the TV. This is essentially somebody who is just holding their head in their hands. When we start evaluating what we think we're seeing is kind of where the disconnect begins. Now, if we approach this person thinking that they were potentially in some level of distress and actually they just had an itchy scalp, they might actually be quite annoyed the fact that you thought they would be distressed, and actually they're fine. And that could actually ensue an odd conversation, and actually just constantly creating a disconnect. You think they're in distress, but potentially they're not. And it's essentially a way that we try and help people, and it can be very admirable, but actually it does more harm than good. So what we'd like to encourage people to do is to actually truly observe what we actually see, not what we think we're seeing. And this is the two sides of our brain. So the fast thinking brain here, the dark blue, that's the symbol for the fast thinking brain with a clock inside. This is a evaluatory brain, okay? That's an evaluation, what you think you see and hear. We do this all the time. It can be really useful in some work scenarios, but not when we're actually sort of tackling people who might be going through something. Let's not evaluate what we think. Let's actually flip it around and use our slow thinking brain. 317 times 928 makes you stop and go, okay, what are the facts of what you see and hear going on right now? It means that you actually know nothing, and it actually opens up the opportunity for you to now connect with somebody, potentially to find out what is going on rather than what you think is going on. So this is the first, absolutely the first stage of observation. The next bit, we go under the waterline of the iceberg here. We have a wonderful tendency as human beings to think it's really annoying. It's very useful sometimes, but generally we love a thought, and thoughts are how we interpret other people's responses and actions. What are they thinking about me? What do I think that person is thinking? And it goes on and on. We try and second guess, we try and analyze, and we do live in thought an awful lot of the time. And the problem with that is thoughts are, as someone's just put But, oh, that's a really ugly trap. Absolutely. Thoughts are a bit of a trap sometimes, particularly when we're trying to connect with people, because we're thinking rather than sort of experiencing. We aren't 317 times 928 present. And actually, we're not then knowing what we're actually feeling, or what the other person might be actually feeling. And feelings are complex, but they are about describing our physical and psychological responses to things, not what our thoughts are, but what the body is actually going through, whether that's a sense of fear, joy, celebration, rage, sadness. It could be many things for many people. And so we have to, in the second part of the framework, learn between the two. We don't jump to our thoughts, but we do actually kind of sit in our feelings. The third bit, we also love to strategize. I am terrible at this. I love a strategy because it often helps us get out from any uncomfortable feelings as quickly as possible. Love to fix things. So the idea of being able to move into a strategy phase if something needs to change, something is going wrong or something is challenging, is often a great way. We have to employ strategies in work, but when it comes to applying strategies with people, it doesn't quite hit the mark, because strategies are, in a sense, external directions, demands, and instructions of people. That's quite a lot, and that often sets up quite a disconnect. It can be an abuse of power with regards to power dynamics, but generally it really shuts down the opportunity to advocate for oneself if you're being told what to do. So what we want to do is we want to flip it around, and we need to understand what our internal requirements. This is a big part of the program, something I don't have time to go into detail in this moment, but that is like a big crux of what we explain and help people explore. The last bit, we like to then just demand things happen. I need you to do this, directing others to comply. Again, often driven by time pressures and hierarchies within organizations. So demands directing others to apply, that obviously disconnects with people. So we try and shift it to this idea of requesting. And requesting is always a way of inviting others to problem solve with you. And that's a big sort of shift. That's our slow thinking brain. Again, this then becomes the crux of how to human program. So to recap that, we start with this idea of busyness. We understand that we have a fast thinking brain that generally, if we employ it, generally creates a disconnect. We often go in opposite directions. But using this framework, the triangle, we can then essentially help you find better methods to access your slow thinking in order to connect and support. That's the aim. So what we found is we've done this program multiple times, and I've done it many times in different sectors altogether and different organizations. It's number 4, it's the requests bit, the application of it that we want to support you most strongly with. And this is where we came up with the Human Handbook. And now this is the practical tool, and it is a physical guide to connecting with me as a person. This is ultimately how you manifest the request stage into something very practical that you can literally have in an email signature or as a document for work. So the Human Handbook becomes the key to the request stage, and that's what we are going to offer to you, but also so that we can show you how to fill one in and for you to be able to adapt and do it yourselves. So it is a physical template. My smiley face is not accurate, but the idea is that we created a 2-page PDF kind of document where information can be filled. And when we've done this program before, we essentially help you fill in what needs to be written in each of the segments. This is an example of mine. You don't have to read it now because you get this PDF later, but this is used as an example about how I would offer this information that I felt comfortable offering. But in it it understands all my needs and is requesting in certain ways that aims to connect and engage with people, but also entirely safeguarding me. So a little just sort of a zoom in on this. We saw the communication preferences, always a great place to start. how we all respond to connectivity, i.e. phone, email, and other kind of platforms. And it's interesting how everyone is a little bit different with this. And just because the boss loves an email doesn't mean everybody else does. So when we've run these training sessions before, we have actually kind of done lots of word clouds, and we've asked people about what does it feel like when having to read and respond to emails. Well, here's a real diverse range of answers here. We have everybody who goes from fun, love it, to the biggest word, which was overwhelmed. We have a mixture of stressed and calm. We have energy draining. We have people that just get on with it. We have people thinking that it's distracting. Some people feel in control. So even responding to emails within one group of people, it is wildly different how others respond just to communication preferences. So if we're just going to target one niche answer here, we disconnect with everybody else. How do you feel when having to make a phone call? Here's an example. 77 different people answered here. For a lot of people, is anxious, makes them anxious and nervous. Some people calm. I love a phone call, far prefer it to an email, but for some it makes people incredibly terrified. And it's important to understand that a workplace can't be putting people into this state every day, because how are you going to connect as people at work, but also have a dignified and respectful workplace? Another part of the Human Handbook we have is a section on being in meetings and receiving feedback. And we found they are very interesting environments where we deal with relationships with people, i.e. groups, where there might be a hierarchy, or often one-to-one, where there is definitely a power dynamic. And receiving feedback is always a great place to look at, because particularly if you're in a management or leadership position, this is obviously going to be a prime example of the types of challenging conversations where you would definitely want to employ connection rather than disconnect. So I'm just going to sort of go back to Menti, because you don't have to listen to me talk for 2 minutes. I'm going to ask you a question, and I want to know, what are the challenges of delivering feedback for you? You may never have done that, and that's totally fine. But if you have ever delivered feedback, what have you found difficult about it? What fabulous answers. Hurting feelings is obviously a big one. Yeah, it's almost like trying to find the balance with what needs to be said, how you're going to say it, what the response is, what the action's going to be. Yeah, it can be too blunt. Anger, creating empathy. This is a fascinating kind of insight as delivering feedback. This is a lot. That's hard to navigate that, particularly if you're in a position of having to deliver feedback. Who supports you with it? It kind of works all the way up the chain, and it feels like this is obviously an important area, because if those one-to-one interactions that living feedback are creating disconnect, it's very hard then to sort of build a connected tissue within everydayness with regards to working in teams and working with groups of people. So thank you. And this is obviously key to how we explore particularly those issues within the program. So thank you for your honesty in being able to provide that information. I'm going to just jump back to the slides now, and we'll finish off, so we've got some time for some questions at the end. So the Human Handbook, we have a basic kind of template that we physically give to you. and to be able to fill it in together so you do receive this. But what has been amazing since we started doing this, it's how it's been taken on by people. We have an academy school using it, we have organizations using it. The idea is we're planting the seed, and for you to have autonomy about how you would like to explore this way of communicating. So here's an example of how different people have used their Human Handbook. You use our template as a springboard, really. So obviously it's a document that primarily people put in an email signature, or it's used potentially alongside CV through recruitment, or it's used in onboarding as a physical document that can be discussed. Super helpful with feedback sessions and performance reviews. And it's often like a really clear way to sort of set boundaries, but advocate for needs, but doing it in such a constructive way. So here's an example of how people have taken it. So we're not saying how it should be, we're offering how it could be. Is that it? No, of course it's not, because we've still got another 5 minutes to go. No, we kind of need to go back to a really big thing that we've left. We've left the sheep all there alone in the gap, and the value action gap is still there. Even if we understand this framework, even if we understand all these things, we still got to apply this. We still have to put this into action in meaningful ways. Obviously, that's what our program is designed to do. But this is where the triangle kind of comes in. How do we bridge this gap? So we still need to do this. And I'm going to remind you of the two factors. So we kind of looked at the time, the busyness and the fast brain, but we kind of also need to look at the role of imitation and the role modeling. When there is a lack of role modeling, the gap persists. And this is where you come in. This is anybody who is in a position of responsibility that has other people around them, working with them, working for them. How are you going to role model it yourself? That's like first and foremost. You have to be the one to show how to bridge the gap. So this is kind of like what we do with the triangle, the iceberg. We kind of lift it up. We kind of use a bit of leverage here. And you need to role model using the 4-step framework and conversations yourself. Okay, and we assist you with that. But the idea is, in order kind of like to not sink the Titanic, is to kind of make the scale of things visible to all, make the bottom of the iceberg visible to all. So essentially, like the way that we put requests into action by using tools like the Human Handbook. But what we need to do is we kind of need to lift up this model a bit more, and we need to turn it on its head. We need to have a support. We need to have a community and a network upending it, so that the requests kind of come to the forefront, built on our great understanding that we have of how to truly observe, how to really access feelings over thoughts, how to not strategize, but actually work on human needs, and to be able to request in a way that's really constructive. And when we take the triangle, we put it in between the two mountains of values and intentions and actions. This is how we bridge the gap, by able to use this as a bridging tool. And once we bridge the gap, we can move from values and intentions to actions. We can walk from one to the other. And this is when it comes together with regards to recruitment, onboarding, performance reviews, feedback, team management, and working with subcontractors and freelancers. This is how we can kind of utilize this in a very practical way, by bridging the gap with this, not simply just knowing stuff, but actually using it. And that's a way. So what do you get? Well, it's free, obviously, and we utilize your time and your interaction, but you will be shown exactly how to use the framework. You will be shown, given the Human Handbook template, how to fill it in and then how to apply it. And you'll also be given a ton of extra tools for your toolkit around neuroidentities, sleep health, because that's an important part of our physical needs, and essentially how to fill that request bit in your triangle so that you can more confidently bridge the gap and retain an autonomy in the position of leadership and management that you have. So How to Human is a 2-part program, as I've said. The first session and the second session, they're 2 hours long. We have some breaks because we're aware that's a lot of focus. They are recorded. And because of people working on different times and in different places and different hours, we are offering the same session 3 times in the week of the 13th to the 16th of May. So different sort of morning and evening and afternoon on 3 different days of the week. And we're going to do the same thing, the second session, which happens a few weeks later. And we're going to have a little gap between the 2 because there'll be an opportunity for you to fill in your handbook and be able to reflect and perhaps utilize some of the learnings. So the idea is that the two are linked. And you'll be able to come to the second session being able to apply some of the things that you've learned. Obviously, Mental Health Awareness Week runs from the 12th to the 18th of May. So we are tying in the first sessions with that same week. So hopefully there'll be greater conversations around the subject for then. If you want to book, the codes are on the final slide, which I'll show you in a minute. And you can also go to safeinourworld.org in order to find all the details about training and all the other work that they do. So, like, as a last note, really, when we're connected, we generate empathy. We can positively challenge and effectively eliminate bias. This is how we advocate for our needs in a safe and meaningful way. And I do honestly, wholeheartedly believe that we all have the capacity to do this. It's sometimes we need a little bit of support to be able to improve our connections where possible. So I'm going to do the last bit of feedback because your input's always valuable to us. We're going to jump back to Mentimeter for a second. And on the final slide, what 3 words will you take from today's session? And if someone doesn't put sheep, I'll be really disappointed. But what 3 words will you take from today's session? Just so we sort of get a gauge of what interested you most today. Excellent. Sheep, triangle, sleep. Love it. Perfect. Brilliant. I love it. We'll make the sheep win today. Wonderful. I hope it's given you a smile for the end of the weekend. I'm going to let that run, and I'm just going to go back to the final slide on Menti on my presentation. With huge thanks to everybody at Safe in Our World. Please do check out the work they do. This presentation uses a neuro-inclusive font called Lexi Readable if you're interested in using different types of fonts, particularly for dyslexia. And here are the 2 QR codes where you can scan to book your sessions if you're able to, or go into the website. Again, all these slides will be available to you after the talk. But that's it from me. I'm going to stop sharing my screen and come back and to see if there's any comments or any questions.
Thank you so much. That was really good. Someone just put in the chat, stop, think, sheep, and that is going to be my new mantra for the rest of my life. I'm just going to stop the recording now so that we can give folks the opportunity to ask questions that are not recorded. So bear with me while I do that.